Alright, yo, what up, what up, what up? Welcome back to the solar system series known as Up in the Air, where we talk about the air signs up in the air. So, let's get down to it, right? Jupiter and Libra. So, Jupiter and Libra, Jupiter and Libra, Jupiter in Libra. Now, before we get into all the, traits of this type of person with this alignment, let's break down the normal alignments as we do. So, Jupiter, what is Jupiter? Jupiter is the planet of expansion through experience. You can most likely experience this whenever you binge watch a Netflix series nowadays. It's sort of just that feeling where you just dive into one singular subject and you want to expand into all aspects of it, regardless of, time, how you feel, how you feel about what you have to do. Anytime your Jupiter starts tingling, this is the thing you have to do right the fuck now. You know what I'm saying? Like Jupiter really gets crazy, I'm not saying Jupiter and Libra people exactly do the best with this sign, but, they definitely get into that feeling of just like wanting to dive into something, They just always probably want to do it with someone else. But aside from that, expanding through experience is how you gain all of these things of like knowledge, wisdoms, meaning, reasoning. Something that actually makes you feel that when you dive into so much, so deeply head first with any blatant disregard for what you have going on right now is something that you'll, you're going to gain something out of, Because when you really catch those vibes and just go through the gauntlet of all the possible feelings you can go through by just doing something like this, you'll like I said, you're gonna get something out of it. But anyways, let's talk about Libra a little bit so we can build these two awarenesses and put them together for your own alignment's sake. You feel what I'm saying? So Libra, right? Libra is, it's born from the 7th house, the house of relationships, joint endeavors, basically anything you do with someone outside of yourself. You know what I'm saying? This is the opposite of the 1st house. So instead of your personalist, just you as an individual, your aura, your own space, your own feeling. This is you engaging with that aspect of yourself for another person. You get what I'm saying? So basically, whatchamacallit? With this being the case, Jupiter is represented as the scales, right? It's always trying to maintain balance between two parties, You got one thing here, one thing here. If this is out of balance, Libra is the entire scale itself, so it's going to feel it. It's going to tilt to one direction. It's going to be at one side. It's going to feel the necessary need to make sure everything is level, right? Now, why do we say this? So, basically, Libra is cardinal fire, cardinal air, which is basically initiating, creating new ways of how to think and communicate, you know what I'm saying? So how do you come up with new ways of thinking and communicate? You got to bounce that around with other people, right? You got to go, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? How do you do it? How do you engage with this? Do you know about this? This is a typical Libra situation. They're pretty uplifting, pretty jovial, they're doing what they do. But running down the line a little bit, Libra is exalted in Saturn, the planet of boundaries, restrictions, limits, how you create structure for yourself, as well as engage with prefabricated structures in your external reality, as well as also how you see reality. You feel what I'm saying? Now, moving down the line a little bit, we have where Libra is at home at, which is the planet of Venus, the planet of love, appreciation, values, as well as how one relates to others, right? And then Libra is also away in Mars, the planet of, basically action, motivation, aggression, just any feeling that is strong enough to get your ass up off the couch. You get what I'm saying? And then it falls in the sun. This is I know this is tied to the 5th house in some type of ways, but if you know a little bit about the 1st house and what sign was birthed from there and what sign is exalted in the sun, you'll catch my drift of why this doesn't exactly work well with Libra. This is the sun illuminates, the sun enlightens, the sun makes you aware of, you know what I'm saying? And you can't do great making people aware of your own individual space when you're trying to, make sure everything's in a balanced, kosher means with someone else. You get what I'm saying? So it's sort of like, Libra doesn't do well in the sun at all. It's like, fuck the sun. I'm trying to help other people. Get out of here, bitch. And then, so, with that being the case, let's talk about Jupiter and Libra a little bit, right? I know I rambled on about the technicals for a little bit, but let's get into these traits. So, a Jupiter and Libra person, their expansion is kind of predicated on what others feel outside of them. You get what I'm saying a little bit? So imagine this, right? Taking the Netflix example back into the loop. So, if normal Jupiter situations where Jupiter is in a good sign that it feels well in, it'll just dive in and expand, it isn't necessarily predicated on relating it to others, Where Jupiter and Libra people sort of take a spin on things is if they hear something about the Tiger King they would either be in the situation of, one, being like, hey, yo, bro, what's going on? You hear about this Tiger King shit? Man, you know, with that NBA 2K, I saw freaking Joe Exotic dunking on Carol Baskin. You know what I'm saying? What do you think about this? Do you feel about this? Would you watch this with me again? And then they'd be kind of, you know, waiting on the other person's thoughts, keyword thoughts, on the thing before they actually dive into something. You know what I'm saying? So it's also, they're trying to relate these ideas, trying to get these ideas out, trying to enlighten people to what's going on so that they can be like, hey, you know, maybe I want to engage in this. Maybe I'll dive into this. Maybe I'll do this. You know what I'm saying? So, like, they always, it's sort of, Jupiter and Libra people, before they really dive into something, it's always waiting on someone else's thoughts to some extent, you know? And it may not always be them just calling people up trying to ask for permission to do something. It's more of like all Libra signs just feel like it would be better to dive into something or just do anything with someone else. You know what I'm saying? Why not do it with someone else? And it's not like a necessarily clingy thing per se. It's just a like a, hey, you know, maybe they just have that natural influence to do things with other people. Now, the other kind of part of Jupiter and Libra is where they just love to, if they really want to dive into something and they don't necessarily have to just call somebody, they'd rather convince somebody to actually do it with them, you know? So if they want to watch a Netflix series and binge watch a Netflix series, it would be, like I said, it's very thought-based, very methodical. It's not like super premeditated and well thought out to the nth degree, but it's sort of like Jupiter and Libra people just love just diving into all this shit with someone else. You get what I'm saying? So, with that being the case, a Jupiter and Libra person would probably try to convince someone to watch this Netflix series with them. They would love to get someone to do it with them. They would love to get someone to expand into freaking, like, you know, tango class, or like, oh, you know, Friday Night Lights, let's go dancing, let's watch some football, da-da-da-da-da, you know? It's always about expanding into something with someone. Now, I've talked about, you know, the whole relationship aspect to this Libra sign, but maybe with this being placed here, Jupiter and Libra people love to expand into their relationships. They love to learn more about the people around them. They love to expand the relationships they have. A Jupiter and Libra person probably has a more vast network than a Gemini to some degree, because if they really take it to the purest part of the influence, they would be expanding their relationships, and they would be expanding into those specific relationships while probably being on LinkedIn or Facebook, or someone being like, hey, I like this, you like this, you want to do this together? And it's just like they're in everybody's DMs, and they're not even trying to get nothing out of it except just companionship. You know, maybe they do want to relate, and just, you know, sometimes a Jupiter and Libra person, you know, can go deep and really want to hit the Tinder phase hard, if you know what I mean, because, I mean, I guess that kind of touches on the whole point of yeah, I guess that sort of brings up how here, let me just explain it and quit beating around the bush. So, you know how, like, people always think of Scorpios as being the ones that are into their deep, dark desires and maybe, like, sex addicts to some degree? Well, that's not exactly true, because Scorpios are too stuck in their, like, you know, just, like, they just like diving down deep, and, like, if they are going to go into some weird, kinky shit, it would be with probably one person or a couple predefined people and screen people to what they would want to do something with, you know? A Scorpio person would probably have to get get them all tested, if you know what I mean, before they actually would go into deep into that situation. But it's not always the case, which is why, you know, it's just common knowledge that Libras are always the one that are freaking sex addicts. So especially if it's in this Jupiter sign, you know, Jupiter doesn't exactly like to be in the thought space, which is another point that we'll get to. So it's kind of like they'll just think themselves into how they have to go into all these relationships. And what's the highest possible way you can expand into a relationship and get personal with somebody? Sex, man. You know, if you're in somebody or on somebody, that's a pretty deep way to connect. And if you got your Jupiter placed in a freaking Libra sign, you know how it's gonna go. You get what I'm saying? So just be aware of that to some degree, because you might really want to expand your network into all these different relationships. And then once you get your network expanded, you're going to want to, whenever you catch the vibe, you're just going to want to expand into somebody else, if you know what I mean. And, you know, with that being said, let's, I guess we can kind of, we got to talk about the thoughts. That's right. So talking about the thought aspect of it, right? Jupiter is a very feeling sign. You can't really extract knowledge, meaning, and reasoning from just an understanding of something, which is why when you expand through experience, you sort of get into this vibe of just being like, oh, okay, You know, let me just hop, skip, jump all the way over here and only think about it and only gain my understanding of it. No, if you actually go through an experience of yourself, you know, because you actually felt the experience. You're not just a book learned person just being like, hey, let me just read up on these genomes right here and figure out, you know, how I can create an X and a Y chromosome so I can get a specific baby after expanding into all of these kinky situations. You know, it's not freaking, you're not in the freaking red room where you just gotta sign another contract for freaking who knows what. You know what I'm saying? It's not just the thought based. You're not just signing physical contracts for experience all the time. But, you know, I mean, you're not, it's not a physical contract, but you are signing contracts. But that's another video, you know? So basically talking about all this shit, let's just, you know, keep in mind that this isn't the best placement for Jupiter because it's not utilizing the medium that would like to, which is either fire or water, you know, the feeler signs. Jupiter is no, it's not exalted in Pisces. The masculine and feminine side to Jupiter are both Sagittarius and Pisces. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Pisces is exalted in Venus, and I forget what Sagittarius is exalted in. But anyways, that's besides the point. So let's just remember that you're coming at these expansion experiences from an underlying position, which is why Jupiter doesn't necessarily like Libra. So just remember that when you're trying to expand into a thought-based space, you shouldn't be stopping and thinking like, oh, maybe ask this, and this person who's done this before I expand into it. You know what I'm saying? Like a Jupiter and Libra person is just at a disadvantage because they won't necessarily be feeling their way through expansion in the most beneficial space. You know, they'll be feeling around their way through through expansion around those hips, if you know what I mean. But yeah. Anyways, let's run down the technical aspects of it. So, Jupiter is the planet of expansion through experience, which basically, through these things, you can derive knowledge, wisdoms, and higher meanings and reasonings towards whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you're expanding into. Now, with that being the case, Libra is born from the 7th house, the house of relationships, and basically joint endeavors and whatever you're doing together. And then it is cardinal air, being loves to initiate and create new ways of thinking and communication. You know. And then it is exalted in... Actually, no, I don't want to do it from this way. It falls in the sun. It's just the general planet of expression in general, which you consciously see from the world as well as how you express yourself. It is away in Mars, the planet of passion, willpower, aggression, motivation, and basically any emotion that can actually get you off the couch to do something with your lazy ass. And then it is also at home in Venus, the planet of love, appreciation, values, as well as how one relates to others, which is, you know, Libras are pretty uplifting people and they love to just bounce around and do their thing. So Jupiter and Libra is going to be a joy to expand with, even if they don't quite do it properly. And then on top of that, Libra is exalted in Saturn, the planet of boundaries, restrictions, limits, structure, as well as how you see reality. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, thanks for watching the solar system series known as Up in the Air, where we talk about the air signs up in the air. Anyways, peace.